This episode of Fresh and Buds is brought to you by Levia's Sleep Store. Folks, sure, we got mattresses there, but it's all about the pillows. We have Unworldly Pillow, Barraging Pillow, probably some other pillows, Primeval Pillow. It is a pillow bonanza down at Levia's Sleep Store. Check it out. Fresh and Buds now.
Fresh and
All right, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh and Buds. It is episode 150. I am your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all of my buds. And today we are joined by Chris Iaali, SoCal, or I'm guessing SoCal if you're Arcane Games. SoCal,
that's right.
pro player, has been on the scene for a long time, had some great finishes, and finally getting you on the podcast. Chris, how's it going, my friend?
Going great. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. And 150 episodes. That's a milestone. So congratulations.
Yeah. It's one of those ones that, obviously we big celebrated 100, and then we'll celebrate the years, and then 150 falls in between some stuff.
Yeah.
So the years in August. So 3 years, I guess. I don't know. But we're humming and dinging over here, I guess. But
that's awesome.
We got a great episode for you all this week. We're going to get to know Chris, and then we're going to talk about kind of these really fast aggro decks kind of taking Nationals by storm, at least after 2 weeks. And we're going to get Chris's opinions on that. But first, let's get to know you. You've been, like I said, a mainstay in the pro scene of Flesh and Blood for a long time. Really popping on the scene. I mean, most notably, your Worlds finish, which was excellent. But where did it all begin for you? With other TCGs and then Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, so I started my TCG career with Magic the Gathering. I've been playing Magic competitively since Return of Ravnica, which I think is 2009-ish, 2008-ish. And then I traveled a lot and played in a bunch of the Grand Prix and Pro Tours for Magic. And then I used to be one of those guys that was like Magic only, no other card games. And some of my close friends got me into the Dragon Ball Super card game. And after trying that Dragon Ball Super card game and the very first couple sets, I really enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, maybe there are other card games out there other than just Magic that are good and I can see myself playing competitively. And so I was much more inclined to try new things. And when Flesh and Blood came out, and the same group of friends that got me to try Dragon Ball Super got me to try Flesh and Blood, and I kind of fell in love right away. I was playing with Tyler Horspool, and we were playing with these blitz decks. I'm playing Chain, he's playing Prism, and I'm just drawing my first 4 cards, and I'm trying to think of all the possibilities that I can do with these 4 card hands, and knowing that I'll be able to drop at the end step, and it just blew my mind away of how deep the game can go with pitch stacking and everything. And so I fell in love with Flesh and Blood right away, and that was right before the calling in Las Vegas, where Tyler took it down with his innovative Prism list. And I've been grinding ever since. So
well, that is kind of I guess serendipitous that you and Tyler were playing Chain versus Prism, because, just in the blitz decks, because that's what that calling was. Just kind of Tyler coming in there and just winning with Prism. I felt like that deck wasn't really respected at the time, and it's very cool now. Dragon Ball Super, I do want to ask you, because it comes up every once in a while. We'll talk to some guests and they'll mention that game. I even think I have a card. I don't even know how the game works. I just kind of grew up liking Dragon Ball Z, so I have a card. It is this Piccolo. It was right next to me when you started talking about it. I just love Piccolo, my favorite characters, and I just you know what? I'm just gonna get that. It says I can win which is debatable in my Flesh and Blood career. But you know, how similar is Dragon Ball Super to any other card games we might know, or even Flesh and Blood? I guess
it's a lot closer to. It's kind of like a mix of Magic with some other card games. I guess the closest card game I compare it to now is Alpha Clash.
Mm-hmm.
Alpha Clash seems pretty similar to how Dragon Ball Super used to play. Maybe kind of similar to Lorcana, where like you can use any card, put any card down as a resource. But then you still have to like it still has the mana system of Magic where and like creatures and everything where you're just trying to attack life total. So it was a good mixture of like a lot of games like Magic, Pokemon, Final Fantasy, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and I guess the game is like defunct, or there's like a new Dragon Ball Super Fusion or something like that. Somebody was telling me. I don't know.
Yeah, I saw that they revamped it, but I haven't tried the revamped version yet. And I heard it was like they were having a card availability issues, and so I haven't gotten into it yet. But
it seems like that happens a lot with you know, I don't know, but yeah, but no, that's pretty cool. Now it does sound like your group of friends, they're the early adopters, and they're the ones that get you know, drag you along, get you into Flesh and Blood, you know. So you play that calling, you know, and then next thing you know, at I believe it was the first Worlds, you are squaring up against Michael Hamilton in the finals. You know,
yep.
How like what was your process from going from that Las Vegas calling to sitting at the finals of the first World Championship of Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, it's pretty surreal. I had basically always been a Runeblade stan, and like I started with Chain, and then I had been working on Briar for a long time. I wasn't even sure I was going to play Briar at that Worlds, because the Pro Tour before that Worlds in Lille, I was actually playing Icelander myself. And so I was like back and forth. And the testing group that I was working with at the time, we just decided like to have a meeting in the hotel room the night before. And we're just like, all right, we're locking in Briar. And what do we think about all these different like card choices? Like that's how we ended up on Flex as being one of these random 0-for-4s that could also be a popper against Dromai. And like it was just basically all brewed up the night before and just used some of our previous experience. And yeah, as the tournament went on, my day one wasn't that good. I think I finished X and 2, but I just kept winning in day 2, and I brought Prism for Blitz to prey on all the wizards, and I ended up facing just like only Wizard and Guardian and Blitz, and everything just kept going my way day 2, and next thing I know I was in the top 8, and then obviously in those top 8 and top 4 matches I got pretty lucky, and yeah, it was unreal, and I was blown away by the amount of support that I had from my friends and even people that I hadn't even met before. So it was great.
Well, you definitely, you know, well, it's kind of funny, right? Like if, you know, it's two really nice guys at the finals, which like was, I think for me, I remember even talking about that. It's like, oh, okay. Because I was used to other card games where, you know, sometimes it's like the competitive spirit is really awesome, but it could lead people down a dark path of being kind of jerks, I think, and I've witnessed in other card games. But when we had the first World Championship, it's like, oh, well, Michael's just a sweetheart, and you seemed like a sweetheart as well. It was just like, oh, this is such a good representation of the pro scene and the game. And that was so cool. And also it was, you know, I guess, you know, obviously, it would have been great for you to have taken it down. Obviously, Michael took it, but second, I mean, like runner up at the first Worlds is amazing, and the
Yeah.
landscape of Flesh and Blood could have changed drastically, right? Because I don't know what the points of Briar were at that point, but certainly she would have LL'd a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was like what, like she was at like 998 for a very long time, which was, neither here nor there. And now that's awesome, and it's so cool that you got to do it with like kind of loving Runeblade. We'll forgive you for playing Prism in Blitz, but that's but we are about to get some new Runeblades in Rosetta, and basically kind of the half return of Briar in two different ways. We've seen the text, at least of the young heroes of Florian and Aurora, the Earth Runeblade and the Ice Runeblade. What are your thoughts so far, as someone who's brutal of Runeblade, when you're looking at these two heroes?
Yeah, I'm a little torn because I've always really liked the lightning elemental cards more than the earth elemental cards. But Florian seems to I'm more interested in how Florian decks are going to shape up to look like compared to the Aurora decks, because one of the themes that I really like in card games is like recursion and like graveyard recursion and stuff, and the way Florian's text reads, it kind of makes me think that it'll lean in that direction a little bit. And so I'm more interested to see where the Earth Runeblade ends up, but always been a big fan of Ball Lightning and Arcanic Crackle and Twine Lightning and all that stuff. So
yeah, it seems like Aurora is going to be able to abuse some stuff where Florian actually has like a game plan that you're going to have to grind a little bit, which I think is good, right? Like we don't need two really fast Runeblades. Maybe we shouldn't have a Runeblade that can use Channel Mount Heroics super efficiently and multiple attacks of a turn. I don't know. Maybe they do want you to do that. We will see.
Yeah.
But I think even a bud in the Discord, the Buds Discord, shout out, I believe it was Junior, who said, is Florian basically just Golgari? And, as like an old Magic player, I'm like, actually, it kind of seems like it. And that makes me really excited because I always liked, that kind of theme in that card game. So Florian's the first Runeblade I've ever looked at and said, I want to play this. I've always been a Brute or Riptide kind of guy. So it's pretty exciting. Now, you're sitting there, you got your Arcane Games and Events shirt on. The folks over there are awesome. We had Blake on, a couple episodes ago at this point. It's a great scene down in SoCal, it seems like. What's it like being on the team, and what's your role? And, you do some streams as well.
Yeah, the team is great. It's basically the same group of players that I had mentioned about for that Worlds tournament. We're all still testing together basically, and we just expanded, and that team is now the Arcane Games and Events team. And I guess my role on that team is more of the organizer. I guess I could be considered a team captain. I kind of lead the meetings and try to plan things out. And but yeah, I mean, being on the team has been great, and we've constantly been improving as a team, and we're starting to get some good results. Like in this past nationals, we had Colin win the ProQuest Plus on Friday with Kasai, and we had Austin Somers have his breakout performance with the top 8 in nationals with Prism. And so yeah, I mean, I love this team, and I expect only great things from us in the future. But yeah, I've been streaming. I started streaming my prep for nationals on the Arcane Games YouTube channel. and I was streaming like the draft fab, or it's not called draft fab anymore, draft answer queues, and just like some of the classic constructor decks that I was leaning towards leading up to the event. And I was like blown away with the amount of support and views and everything that I was getting on the stream. And like even during the nationals tournament, people coming up to me and saying that they enjoyed watching my stream just made it feel all worthwhile. And I'm excited to get back into streaming. I'll be like sharing my prep for Amsterdam, and um it's been so much fun, and I can't wait to do it again. So
Yeah, well, it's kind of cool. This is something that I felt like Flesh and Blood was kind of missing. I mean, I remember even like 2 years ago, a year ago, there weren't that many streams, and the few streams that there were, they weren't consistent, and then they really started to come together. Now we have like a lot of awesome streams, so people could just watch Flesh and Blood like all the time, consume it, beyond just like pre-recorded content, and it's really great to see that. Now, in terms of preparing for Amsterdam, it's kind of cool that you're sharing, your preparation, right? You always want to keep some secrets, right? Your flexes or whatever, but that's really sweet. And it's kind of interesting because you kind of get to get your thought process on different things as well. And that's like really valuable for the viewer. Now, in terms of you as a player, I mean, you've played a lot of different heroes, right? You've mentioned Chain, Briar. You won a ProQuest Plus on Levia.
That's right. Yeah.
Levia, and then you top 16'd the Battle Hardened on Riptide, right? So like that's a pretty wide spread of heroes. I mean, and that's probably not even scratching the surface, right? You played Prism and Blitz. I want to know what your thoughts are on the direction of the game for this year so far, because it's been kind of like a seesaw in a way. I feel like Heavy Hitters comes out, which actually feels like it was 2 years ago, but it was this same year, Heavy Hitters, and arguably lower powered, right? Kind of a shift in like, hey, listen, we were pushing some stuff for a while. Let's take it back. I mean, we saw a little bit with Bright Lights as well. Lower powered, outside of maybe KO. That comes out. Then we just have Part the Misfail. Clearly higher powered, right? We're seeing some crazy stuff. With all three of the heroes are doing some crazy stuff. And then we now know that we're going to see the all arcane set. We don't know what the power level is going to be there, but that is a big, not risk, but that's a big endeavor. Like everything's going to be arcane. 2 wizards in a tractable set is going to be pretty wild.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts so far on Flesh and Blood this year so far?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the Heavy Hitters meta. It was low power level, but I think it was also just like meant to be. It was just like a grindy meta where the games went long. Like you could expect games to go past 10 turns pretty reliably with like the Warriors and the Valiant Dynamos, and you had Victor as like the Guardian. Like Brutes were the fastest decks aside from Katsu, but even then, like it felt like there was still a lot of back and forth play. With Part the Misfail, it hasn't. The format has sped up a lot, and most of that is due to Zen, where you can have some crazy turns as early as turn 2 or 3, and so yeah, I think the power levels. I like high power level formats, but I also enjoy the longer games. Like even with back in the past when Chain was like crazy high power level, the games would still go to like turn 7 or 8 as you're building towards these big soul shackle turns.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, overall, I still think the game is good. I think there's still a lot of tech and innovation that people are coming up with to combat these Mistvale heroes, and I think even the expansion slot cards from Part the Mistvale are having a big impact on the format too. So
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You know, I enjoyed the heavy meta as well, especially because I like those grindy games. You know, to be honest, I like a meta where you can play hatchets. You know, I think that's pretty cool, right? And there was some, you know, I've heard some people talk like, you know, when they looked at top 8 of U.S. Nats, Michael Dalton goes triple Art of War, right? Does some crazy stuff. Like and the argument think is totally sound. They're like, that's great for the game. That's a great viewing experience. People are going to look at that like, whoa, I want to do something cool like that in a game, right? Yeah, I understand that argument. And people could say, no, it's not. Or people will say, this is not the flesh and blood that was sold to us or whatever. I don't buy much of that. But but I also have to acknowledge the other side of things where we saw the finals of Pro Tour LA, where it was this grindy Dromai Hatchet Cerithia match where like the most viral moment of that game was Arthur pulling the sigil off the top.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I think both could be true, and maybe some kind of pendulum swing is probably good for the game as well, right? Just have fast metas, have slow metas. We're going to talk about some fast metas in a minute, but before we do, let's get to your fresh faves. This is where I ask you some of your favorite cards in the game. We're going full flesh and blood mode right now. Who's your favorite hero?
It's got to be Chain, just because of he's the hero that got me into the game. Has all the recursion that I was mentioning that I really like, and just my favorite class in general is Runeblade. So Chain, but Fire also holds a special place just because of the world's finished. So
makes sense. Now, are you ever messing around with like the more recursion focused builds of Levia?
Yeah, no, I mean that's what has got me playing Levia so recently. I think is just because transforming into Blasphemous, like the recursion that you can get and like the extra value from each hand is so insane, and that's why I've been working on her so hard. And I like her a lot. So
awesome. Now, what's your favorite weapon?
Favorite weapon? I
know you want to say Rosetta Thorn. I could just see it.
I would really like it to be Duskblade, but I haven't been able to play enough with it. But if it wasn't Duskblade, then it would be the Scepter of Pain. I've messed around with Scepter of Pain a lot in some OTK lists for Viserai, and I feel like that weapon alone enabled like the OTK game plan. And so I've been a big fan of Scepter of Pain.
Yeah, those OTK Viserais hang around on like Talishar all the time, right? And then you're like I'm just starting games as Riptide, and all of a sudden, Viserai comes in. Yeah, you know, all my go again traps. This would be just fine. And then they see the Scepter. I'm like, oh no.
Yep, all the traps are off.
yeah. It is what it is. What's your favorite equipment?
Favorite equipment is probably Tunic. It's pretty generic answer, and but I feel like Tunic is one of the strongest cards in the game. It's one of the first legendaries I opened when I got into the game, and I just basically try to put Tunic in every list that I can. Even Riptide, like I know Riptide players will hate me for trying to put Tunic in the list, but like I've tried it over Trench and stuff, but I am a Trench believer now.
Good.
But yeah, it doesn't matter what the hero is or what the list is. I try to fit Tunic in there if I can. So.
It's iconic. I mean, you know, sure, it's one of the best cards in the game, but like it is flesh and blood in a lot of ways. So it's great answer. Now, what's your favorite, you know, other card, right? Like non-attack action, attack action, any card that you throw into your deck.
Let's see. My favorite non-attack action was Plunder Run. I used to be a big fan of drawing extra cards and going wide with multiple attacks in a turn. So I'd say Plunder Run and or Channel Thunderstep. Channel Thunderstep was a card I messed around with a lot, trying to play things like Tome of Fyendal and non-attack actions without Go Again and Briar and stuff. And so I'm excited to see if Channel Thunderstep has its time to shine with the new set with Rosetta coming out. So
I mean, if there's any time for that card to start singing, it's with Aurora. I mean, maybe even with Acilio, the lightning. Obviously,
the wizard.
You're gonna be interested in the Runeblade, but you know Channel Thunderstep could be it. I did pick up some blinks as well because I think that card has got to be okay, right? It's
for sure, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I'm interested in the wizards too. Like you said, I mean, I've messed around with so many different heroes and so many different classes. I kind of like to attack the meta, and I'll just play whatever I think is good into the most popular decks. And funny story, like my friends and I have been a big fan of Mental Fab, and I don't know if you know what Mental Fab is, but it kind of comes from Mental Magic, where you can just you just have a random pile of cards, and you have to play. You can't play any card more than once. But as say, like I have this yellow Brothers in Arms. I have it in my hand, but I'm gonna play it. You can play it as anything that's a yellow 2 cost. And so you're just trying to come up with all these different cards and combos. And one of the best combos that we would come up with in Mental Fab when we were just playing the hotel lobbies and stuff is Channel Thunderstep plus Tome of Fyendal or plus Tome of Aetherwind, and you're just doing all this stuff and giving these non-attacks Go Again, the crazy things you can do with the card. And it feels like Rosetta is just giving that to us with Lightning Wizards, and I'm really excited for that. So
yeah. Also, I want to know. So for anybody who's seen it, you can probably go look on the website. We've seen the art for Acilio. We don't know the text yet. Probably at Amsterdam, we're gonna get the text.
Right.
It's a big kind of being that's built into a wall. It's huge, and that's the young hero. I want to know what the adult hero is going to look like because that's pretty insane.
Yeah, how does that age? I don't know.
I don't know. It was does I hope it actually gets smaller. It becomes a real somebody gets the essence of Acilio. I don't know. This these questions and more will be answered next episode. No, probably not next episode. In a month or so. Now, we mentioned this aggro meta, right? We're 2 weeks into Nats. We saw Zen have a big win. Evan Herndon at US Nats. There were quite a few Zens in that top 8. And after 2 weeks, we've seen 4 Zens win Nationals. That's double the amount of any other hero that's won. We've seen 2 KOs win and 2 dash IOs, which is where did that one come from? And then we have a smattering of single win heroes like Azalea, obviously not too surprising there. I think won the Calling US or Minneapolis, but it's also won a Nationals, and it's been a nice counter to Zen. And I think a lot of the conversation lately has been kind of around the explosion of Zen, right? I think it's the elephant in the room. There's no doubt that this deck is doing some crazy stuff. I think I mentioned it last week. It's reminiscent of the Stubby Hammer's Phi that they were so scared of, but now we have it as a regular deck. And it is something to talk about, but clearly other decks can be aggressive and have success in this meta. Why do you think that is? Is Zen the kind of the gatekeeper here of allowing a race in a lot of these games?
Um, I feel like Zen is kind of forcing you to race in a way. Like it's not preventing you from racing because you can kind of get there because Zen can like stumble and it can have some consistency issues with not getting the transcend cards to line up or not getting the right combo cards to line up. But you can't really play a long game against Zen like you could in the heavy hitters format with all the other heroes, just because if you give Zen enough turns, they will find that 40 damage turn out of nowhere, and then they'll be able to follow it up with another big turn after they block with their traverse the universe. And so I think you kind of do need to play fast in this format. And I think that while the format is more aggressive, I think there are still some tools that are not being explored as much as they should be. Things like this round's on me, I think should be a mainstay in a lot of these Mistveil decks like Enigma and New. And it kind of just like reminds me of like that Stubby's Fi meta that we were talking about, where like these tech cards like that all you got and stuff were starting to creep their way into lists. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see the meta shape up to where people just like try to build their decks to be more anti-aggro. Whether or not it's enough, I'm not sure, but I think that the meta can still adapt and evolve past aggro only.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see because we still have a couple more weeks of nationals, and then we have Pro Tour Amsterdam, and I believe we will have a banned and suspended announcement.
Between them, yeah.
Between them, it'll be interesting to see if they touch anything. Actually, that's a great question for you. Do you think they'll touch anything? And if they do, what can they possibly touch on Zen that won't affect the other ninjas?
I think whether or not they do decide to put the ban hammer on anything will heavily depend on how well Zen does in these next couple of weeks. To me, it seems similar to how Lexi was at her peak, when like she was the most represented deck, she was the best aggro deck, but she wasn't necessarily winning everything, and they still thought that LSS still thought that there was a lot of tech and counterplay to Lexi. And I wouldn't be surprised if they take that stance with Zen also. Like, he is the most powerful deck. He does have some really big turns, but he doesn't really have disruption to go with those turns. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they said no bans at all. But I have heard a lot of players wishing for so many different cards to be hit instead. Like, I've heard everything from like the boots to Art of War. So it's
what
I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but I don't think that they need to just yet, and I don't think that they will in this upcoming announcement. So
yeah. Well, Art of War would that would suck for Levia, man. I mean,
yeah, I know.
It's not the first time I've heard I think it was Fi they were calling for the Art of War ban as well, and you're just like, no, please don't. like I need, like, that is the only thing keeping Levia alive. I mean, she's fighting for her life out here sometimes. And you know, I think, yeah, you're probably right here, where it's really gonna depend. Like, if Zen just kind of runs away with the next 2 weeks, it should be, like, probably a no-brainer to try to touch something. The boots kind of make sense or whatever, but then there's the boots from this round's on me, round the table, but not as good, doesn't go to your hand, yada yada yada. Now, you mentioned this round's on me as like just like a card that people should just be looking at now, right? As something that you put in your sideboard for your deck, or even just run main board, depending on what you're playing. What are some other deck building kind of reactionary shifts that people might want to look at, even if it's like for Armory and you're just like, I don't want to lose to Zen at Armory. I want to go have fun. So I just want to make sure I have some kind of preparation. We're seeing Censor, we're seeing Amnesia in decks. Is there anything else that maybe is like a stone that hasn't been turned over yet in terms of kind of prepping for the menace that is Zen?
Yeah, I mean, each class has like their own tools, I guess. Like if you wanted to attack your Guardian deck, you could try to play things like Crush the Weak and I mentioned That All You Got also. That All You Got hasn't been that impressive for me so far, but like if you're just looking to race, then I think the card gets a lot better instead of just like trying to play defensively. And so yeah, I think Hold the Line has been like a mainstay as like a tech card since the heavy hitters format. And it's still also very good into Zen also against their Art of War turns. So yeah, I mean, I think kind of just depends on what class you're trying to play. So.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like this rounds on me seems like the universal kind of fix in a way, but I don't know. Even I look at like Battlefront Bastion. That's the new card, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a card that seems like it should do some work into that. Like block two things with one card, but like probably in practice just doesn't get there. What's your thoughts on that card?
I like that card too, and I was pretty high on that card, and I was even thinking of playing it in like my Riptide lists. But then they come out with this Zephyr Needle tech, and you're like, wait a minute, like this doesn't pop the Zephyr Needle, and it's not really like getting the extra one value off of the crouching, like because in the limited format you're using it on the Kakara, and then it blocks the one damage that it gives the Crouching Tiger and stuff. But when you're using it on the Zephyr Needle, it's like definitely not as great. So
yeah, it's tough. But the question becomes, are they bringing in the Zephyr Needles against Riptide? A lot of 3 blocks. I'm not sure, but I don't know. It's a little crazy, but I do want to talk about Riptide because, obviously I love the deck, and you posted a 7-2 record at the Battle Hardened in Minneapolis for top 16. I took a look at your list. It's awesome. It's something that honestly, I wish, like, I always start there and kind of go a little bit more hybrid. Tell us about this list because it's pretty cool. First of all, you're playing the long draw half glove and perch grapplers.
yeah,
I mean, you're fridging up.
Yeah, I mean, the list was inspired by one of my teammates, Anthony Pham, and then there's another Riptide player in Southern California. His name's Talon, and both of them like to play more of a mid-range style that is plays a long game, like the kind of game I like to play. And so, yeah, this list is definitely trying to block out more and play a longer game. I wouldn't necessarily like call it fatigue, but I've been very impressed with the half glove making use of your 5-card hands when you have like, or if you just have like a extra trap in the arsenal that you're just trying to get rid of, using the glove to just like get an extra 4 damage out of a turn cycle that you wouldn't really be able to utilize all the cards in your hand. It's been very impressive. And then yeah, just trying to block out and kind of play this Icelander-esque game plan where you're just like throwing 3 for 7s or 3 for 8s on your turn, and then on their turn when they're attacking back into you, you're using these traps that are also like chipping in for true damage on your opponent's turn and stuff, and like you're just trying to win each turn cycle. And the deck was a lot of fun. I think it has some legs. I think the aggro Riptide lists are a little more popular, but I think that they have the same struggles as like Aggro Moonblade, where you can either draw too many pumps or not enough pumps, and then you also get hit by warmongers because Azalea is still big in the meta, and so I wanted to play something that can like kind of attack the meta, but can't really be attacked itself. So
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to go in depth on the deck, but like there are a couple card choices in here. I just want to point out. There's obviously the This Round's on Me, Hold the Line, Warmongers, great sideboard. Just good blues, right? And then Pendulum Trap, which is just, I mean, anything that's milling is I'm going to be into. And this is, I think I had a conversation with a local of mine, Nick Katavian, and we were always like talking about Riptide. Like, oh man, like we kind of disagree on some things. Like he's a New Horizons truther. I'm like, I don't want to even look at that card. I don't like it. But we're just like, oh, is it a Pendulum Trap meta? And we're just like, I think that's the best kind of meta you can have is Pendulum Trap. So it's really cool to see in there. Is that just for things like new and the other, I guess, like warriors and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we figured that new was still going to be one of the more popular heroes. Warrior is definitely on trending downwards as far as the metagame share goes. But we just wanted to make sure that we had the best win rate as possible against new, and I think Riptide usually does a pretty good job with that. It's the same reason why we have the tripwire traps in there too. It's just more anti on hits against assassins. So
yeah, it was kind of in my list. I took the Nats instead of the Pendulum Traps. I was doing the Blood Rot Traps for that matchup, but
okay.
I think it could have been interchangeable, but I felt like, I don't know. I just wanted to give people blood rots. Maybe I don't know if there was any real reason. I was like, oh, just more damage. Like I'll just throw it in there. But Pendulum Trap's so sweet. And I do want to ask you, not about this list, because we just saw that we're going to get another Armory deck. Despite anybody's feelings on it, we do get some cool cards out of them. We're not here to debate that, but we're going to get the Azalea one. And there is a card in the Azalea one called Line It Up. It's a yellow, 1 cost, +3. Turn a face down arrow face up and give it a aim counter.
Right.
And it blocks 3, I believe. Is this not just a windmill slam into any Riptide deck that's playing Murky Water? Because that's just pitch a blue, play that, load the Murky Water, flip it, +4 dominate.
Yeah.
I mean,
seems sweet to me. Yeah, I'm down.
See, I mean, Murky Water is already like the coolest card that we could get to play with in the deck. I mean, recursion.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's one of the things that Murky Water is the only reason why I'm playing this deck, to be honest. That it's funny, like whenever I play the card, they're like, "Oh, what does it do when it has the aim counter?" And it's like, "Oh, the aim counter is not relevant in this deck." But I hope that I hope we can make the aim counter relevant in the future builds for sure. So
yeah. I mean, just ways of just giving something an aim counter without having to do extra work is kind of nice. So that's pretty exciting. Now, one last question for you before we get to our listener questions is, well, what's next for you, Chris? You rock the pro scene. What can we expect from Pro Tour Amsterdam if you're attending and in the future?
Yeah, so we just wrapped up basically 4 weeks straight of traveling, and so this weekend we have our local AGE Open, which is gonna be Misfailed Draft. I'll be playing in that, and then I'll be hopping back on YouTube with multiple live streams a week and testing towards Amsterdam. And I'm not sure what's after Amsterdam. I think it's gonna be a couple more Battle Hardens, and then probably looking towards Osaka. So
yeah. There's the world premiere in Tampa.
Oh, that's right, Tampa. Yeah, I'll be there for sure.
I mean,
I won't miss it
2
for the
new
world.
room blades. I mean,
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty exciting. We'll have to catch some of the streams, see what you're, rocking with in Amsterdam. I'm sure it'll be something spicy. That's, if anything, the spice leaks into your list, which is kind of cool. Whether it's you or your team, well, we're gonna make you take credit for it right now.
for sure.
Now we do have some listener questions. These listener questions come from the Buds Discord. It's a great place to hang out, free for anybody to join. It is in the show notes below. First question comes from Capolo, aka Andrea Biaggi. Oh my god. I know you, Capolo, don't worry. Who is this guy? First question. And then seriously asked, which underexplored hero do you think it could be? Do you think could be a mainstay if pro players put more time and effort into them?
All right. Let's see. I think that there are 3 that I would shout out. It would be Dash.io, which I think it has already started to see a lot of success, but I think that she definitely could be much more represented than she currently is. I think that she's one of the strongest aggro decks in the game, and the card advantage that you can get from playing items off the top of the deck each turn is kind of insane. And then besides that, I think Levi or Vincent is another one that I would shout out. Like, that doesn't see as much play as it probably should. I think Vincent struggles into decks that are able to block out and just like try to fatigue you in a way, but I don't think that I don't think that's where the meta is right now. So I think Vincent actually can have a pretty good shot at being a mainstay hero. And then lastly, I'd say Sir Bolton. Like, even in the heavy hitters meta, where I think he was like in the best position he's been in for a really long time, people still weren't picking him up. And I'm hoping that the armory deck that he's getting will help him a lot, and more people will pick him up and see that he's not just all card disadvantage with charging. Like, the charging is actually a pretty cool mechanic that it took me a really long time to fully understand how to manage the soul and how to manage the charging. And it's kind of like picking up Dromai for the first time when you're trying to like learn how to manage your ash economy. Like, Bolton has that same thing, but it's just like a charge economy, and it's like it's not really card disadvantage. It's more like of an investment, I guess, and it pays off later for sure as the game goes on. So
Yeah. I forget who I saw talking about it, but like, the difference between someone like Bolton and like Zen, where like you could look at a vacuum and say, well, they both have 40 damage turns. Well, Bolton's doing the fair thing and saving up for it. That was like kind of the point that was made. But Bolton is awesome, and so many different ways to build Bolton, to be honest. And I think that is probably the biggest thing. Is like the deck building has so much more room to kind of grow there, because they definitely give us stuff. They print stuff that's like, we want you to do this thing with Bolton. You don't have to do the other thing. It's like, maybe you want to slow it down, and then, which is kind of cool. Now, Sigma asked, Levi has been a hero we've seen you play in and out. What is your relationship with the Queen, and has she been worth the investment/reinvestment into playing her?
Yeah, like the shadow heroes and their ability to recur things from the banished zone have it has always been like interesting to me and like appealing, and made me want to play those shadow heroes. And I think that there's no doubt that she's very strong right now. I don't know what the best way to build her is. I've been enjoying playing more copies of Graveling Growl and stuff to go along with the Shadow Realm Horror. But Shadow Realm Horror, I think, is one of the strongest cards that you could possibly imagine for Levi. Like being able to play a 2-card 14 is insane. And so I think, and like Carrion Husk is one of the best equipments in the game too. She has so much going for her, and I feel like she has to be one of the best decks in the game. And I would say it's been worth it as far as like the reinvestment goes. And I still haven't solved it, but at the same time, I still haven't solved Levi. And so, she's a hero that I will continue to work on, and I do think that she should pick up in popularity too. But she has the tools to race Zen. And
yeah,
so
I mean, just raw numbers. I mean, she's just so great. And she's another one, actually, that just like Bolton, right? Like, actually, in the same set, Dusk Till Dawn, we got, like, a lot of tools that maybe, like, she probably uses more of her tools that were given to her than Bolton does. But there's still, like, weird, quirky stuff that she has that people can be using. Maybe my spoiler card, Endless Limbs. I mean, let's look at that card. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I like that card a lot too. I've tried it. I have.
It's hard.
I've tried everything. So
I really wanted it to be something. I was like, oh, it's a one of. It's totally a one of. But last question comes from William from the Table Pit, who is gonna just ask you flat out here, Chris. Is Zen too consistent, too easy? Is his power warranted? Right now, you gotta give us your stance on this Zen problem.
All right. I think he's too consistent in the long game, so that's why I think that you're forced to try to race or disrupt him every single turn. And I definitely wouldn't say he's too easy, because any hero that has the ability to search for cards from their deck, and like you get to search for any card, kind of like what's the Viceroy card? Become the Arc Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Like cards like that are not easy to play, because they're just like, it opens up so many lines for each possible hand. And so I think he is pretty difficult to play, like perfectly. And I think he is powerful, but is he too powerful? I don't know. I think it still remains to be seen. I think the next few weeks will show us a lot of what needs to happen to the format, or where the format will, which direction the format will go in. But it's been a while since we've had an Aggro meta, and so I'm fine with the new format as it is right now. But we'll see how things shape up.
we certainly will, and maybe Chris just has the sauce for Zen against Zen, and he's like, oh, let Zen stay around until Pro Tour, so I can.
Not yet. I got wrecked by Zens this weekend in Seattle. So, but when I figure it out, I will let everyone know. I promise.
Thank you. Please. That would be huge, to be honest. But this has been great, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on. You've been an absolute pleasure to talk to, and hopefully we can get you back on, later down the road as well. I hope you had a good time. Please plug anything that you'd like to plug, your Twitter, or where that people can find the streams as well.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'd love to be back, and thank you for having me, Tommy. The only thing I want to plug is the Arcane Games and Events YouTube channel. You can check out the June Open that we'll be having this weekend, where it'll be part the Misfail draft as the main format, and so you'll be able to watch the drafts happen live in person, watch some good limited gameplay, and then look forward to some more live streams coming from me on that channel too. And you can follow me at CapandSeaDog on Twitter, and then I'll be posting updates for when I'm gonna go live. So
hell yeah. Please check all that out, folks. You can continue to find me on Twitter at freshbudspod. Check out the Buds Discord, great place to hang out. Like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube. If you listen on Spotify, give us the old 5-star rating or whatever. And then check out my other podcast I do with my cousin where we talk about indie video games. It's called Fresh Juice. This week we did a card game auto battler roguelike called Throne of Bone. Crazy name. It was a good time. Check it out. And then finally, Chris, I always like to talk about some food. The end of every show, what's some food that you want to shout out, you've been enjoying, anything? What do you want to eat next, even?
Well, my friends would give me a lot of crap if I didn't shout out Taco Bell, so gotta shout out Taco Bell. And but
Well,
yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, Taco Bell. I'll send you my my mailing address for all the checks for the big sponsorship that we just gave you or whatever, free advertisement. But with all that, we don't have time for Charmer, but we'll get to him next week. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris, and everybody. Please stay fresh.